Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day to join us and follow along with what we're doing here. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me as usual, the guy with three names, AWF, Aaron William Freeland.
How you doing today, Frank?
Obviously, not too funny, but at
In
least I
fine vocal form, I can see.
yeah, that's what I am. I got my I'm taking my medication now.
Good.
My blood pressure is below scary, which is good news. I'm taking a lot of medication. I'm finding that the older I get, the more medication I need. You could say I'm heavily medicated.
But I mean, it's obviously not to the point where you're drooling into the carpet, but at least you're still vertical.
Well, I have a pill I take before the show so that I don't.
Ah, perfect.
You need a pill for everything. It's like, it's the worst thing about people who are drug addicts. They take something to get them high, then they take something to get them low, then they take something to get them high, and it's ping pong bad style. So here's the thing. Today's a good day. We're looking forward tomorrow to plus degree temperatures, plus, of course, Celsius is what we do. As far as the Americans are concerned, they'll be about 32. So I think that's good news.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, finally cracking the zero barrier, especially after cold snap we had, is a bit of a relief for sure.
So you know, the weather has been less than cooperative, to be sure. So we're talking about going away. Got any suggestions?
Well, Texas is out. Apparently, they're colder than we are. But there's still a travel advisory in place for Mexico and for Cancun. So your options are really, unfortunately, kind of limited at this point, unless you're planning on going to DR, in which case you'd have to stay on resort the entire time because it's not safe to go off. Really not sure what other options are available.
Well, okay. I'm gonna take that and offer it as a make an offering to figure out where we can agree to go. It wherever it is, Aaron. One thing I can promise you: blue, warm water, lots of sunshine, and I think we're looking for is an all inclusive. I hear the kids like that these days.
Yeah, all inclusive is definitely the way to go. When you don't have to worry about tips and you don't have to worry about how much you're actually going to be spending at the restaurants and everything like that. It eases the mind to have everything all included. So
Well, good.
definitely the better way to go.
Then that's a good decision.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so we're gonna make sure that's the top of the list for priority. Speaking of the top of the list for priorities, the Bombers signed Drew Wolodarski to a 2-year extension.
This is good news for them. Drew's been Drew is scheduled to be a free agent next month. He's going to be his seventh season with the Blue Bombers after originally being selected by the club as a supplemental pick back in 2017. It was last year was one of his best seasons. He set career highs in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns while suiting up for all 18 regular season games. So glad to see him back in the fold for them. It's a definite shot in the arm.
Ottawa. They bring in Drew Brown of the Bombers. They acquire the rights from Winnipeg to discuss things with Drew, and that's an interesting pickup.
For sure. Now, in order to get those exclusive rights, they did actually have to send a fifth round draft pick in this year's draft to the Bombers. So, with that deal, they've got exclusive negotiating rights with the 26-year-old Californian before free agency opens on February 13th. Now, this doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to sign him, but they've
Oh,
got a better crack at it because they can at least prep the way. He's from Oklahoma State and he spent his 3 seasons so far with Winnipeg. but in 2023 he filled in for Zach Collaros while dressing for all 18 games. Brown actually won both of his starts last season on his way to completing 62 of 89 passes for 983 yards, 9 TDs, and most importantly, no interceptions. So that's good news for them. The Red Blacks also announced on Thursday that they'd signed receiver Braylon Addison to a 1-year extension.
Argos add defensive lineman Derek Parrish.
So he was selected by the Jacksonville Jaguars in the 7th round of the 2023 draft and spent 2 months on the team's practice squad before being released by the Jags in October. In his last year at University of Houston, he had 158 tackles, 33 and a half of them for loss, 17 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. So glad to see him returning to the fold. This is good news. This is going to bolster our line. So it's a good thing for us. It'll help us get back to where we need to be.
Elks sign American defensive lineman Keyshawn Camp.
So Camp joins the Double E after spending the last 2 seasons in the USFL. In 2023, he played 4 regular season games for the Philadelphia Stars before being released in late May. He would re-sign with the Birmingham Stallions after appearing in 2 games for the Stallions in 2022. At just 25 years old, he's entering the prime of his career right now, so it's good news for the Elks.
The Stamps extend defensive lineman Julian Hauser.
So he was also due to become a free agent in February. His first season with the Stampeders, Hauser started all 18 regular season games at defensive end, and finished second on the team with 6 sacks. He had 48 defensive tackles, including 3 tackles for loss, 1 special team stop, and 2 forced fumbles. So it's good for them to keep him in the lineup. He definitely helped them last year, hoping he can continue the trend this year.
Lions add DL Jonah Tavai and defensive back Chris Cooper.
So they made another pair of additions to their camp roster today. It's American defensive lineman Jonah and American defensive back Chris Cooper. Tavai actually attended the rookie minicamp with the Seahawks in 2023 after signing as a non-drafted free agent. And as for Cooper, he spent a bit of time with the XFL St. Louis Battlehawks, where he recorded 27 combined tackles. That's 16 solo and 7 assisted in 9 different games.
And then the Lions, they added defensive lineman Jonah Tavai and Chris Cooper, defensive back.
Yep. And they also signed defensive back Denzel Williams. That was a third signing for them. Williams, who's 5'10", had a stint with the USL's Philadelphia Stars in 2023 after spending the majority of 2022's training camp with the Baltimore Ravens. He's out of Coram, New York, and transfers from Sacred Heart to Villanova his final 2 years of eligibility, and managed to earn the CAA Commissioner's Academic Honor Roll Awards in the spring of 2020 and the fall of 2021.
We also have the Lions signing American DB Denzel Williams.
Yep, just covered that one, Frank. Sorry.
That's
no worries.
Stuff going on here.
I saw.
Stamps extend defensive lineman Julian Hauser. I got that one too. The Rough Riders extend Charbel Debayer and Geronimo Allison.
So Charbel Debayer got a 1-year extension. He was again, and you'll notice this, folks, as we get towards February 13th, you're going to see a lot of signings going on here. That's because teams are taking care of the future and locking up potential free agents. So Debayer is continuing his career in green and white after playing all 18 games in 2023 and posting career high numbers. So it was well deserved. Geronimo Allison is also back. He comes to the Rough Riders, with 6 seasons of NFL experience and signed with Green Bay as an undrafted free agent following the 2016 NFL draft. He also spent time with the Falcons in 2022. So good to see him in the fold as well.
The Ticats add 5 American players.
So this is a bit of a list here, so bear with me. The players that they've signed include DB Shabari Davis Jr., receivers Cameron Batson, Kalen Geiger, and Devon Williams, and offensive lineman Brendan Bordner. A lot of these guys do actually have a little bit of NFL experience, but are going to be finding themselves locked in up north, which is good for them, and it's good for the Ticats. It adds a little bit more punch and a little bit more muscle. Most of these guys are under 28, so they're still in their prime, so that's a good thing.
Let's talk about the PWHL.
So Toronto finally got themselves another win. It's been a bit of a frustrating season, but they did actually win in a shootout as they edged Marie-Philippe Poulin and Montreal 4-3. Um, they overcame 2 goals from Marie-Philippe Poulin and 36 saves from Anne-Renee Debian to snap a 3-game losing streak on Saturday night. Lorraine Rougeau scored the shootout winner. They had 39 shots to Montreal's 24 and heavily outshot their opponent for a second consecutive game. Um, they lost to Boston, but outshot them 32-22 in the process. So, I mean, this is what happens when you have a league that's starting like this for the first time ever. The talent level is absolutely through the roof. Toronto may have a losing record, but by no means were they out of any of the games. And when you start with an absolute murderer's row on forward, you're going to get results like this. So.
Let's talk about the Habs and their loss to the Bruins while Marchand gets his 11th straight 20-goal season.
So a bit of a record for him. 220 goals in 11 seasons at least is a really good start. Danton Heinen actually got his first hat trick. Unfortunately, the Habs found themselves on the wrong end of the score, losing 9-4 on Saturday. So that's fourth in a row for Boston. David Pastrnak added his team-leading 30th goal. Pavel Zacha scored the 100th goal of his career. And so far, the Bruins have beaten the Habs 12 out of their past 13 meetings. So I'm sensing a trend here.
Ehlers scores late in OT to lift his team to a victory.
With 45.8 seconds left in overtime, Ehlers managed to pot one. Mason Appleton scored in the second period for the Jets, and Connor Hellebuck actually made 34 saves. Parker Kelly was the lone goal scorer for Ottawa, who played its first overtime game of the season. Eunice Carpasalo on the back end for them had 27 saves. It again, Ottawa's losing games, but they're fun to watch. You have to wonder at what point frustration starts to take over.
And they're winning too. They beat the Flyers. Tarasenko and Giro helped lift the Sabres to a 5-3 win. What happened there?
Well, the former Philadelphia captain managed to score on his own team. Call it a revenge game, if you will. But Vladimir Tarasenko and Claude Giroux scored third period goals as the Sens came back to defeat the Flyers 5-3 on Sunday. This was also Shane Pinto's return to the lineup after his 41-game gambling suspension. Tim Stützle also had a pair, including an empty netter, and Zach McEwen scored as well for Ottawa. So that is, it's a positive for them in that Pinto is back.
Oilers win their lucky 13th straight.
Yeah, so the Flames, winners of 10 out of their past 13, unfortunately found themselves on the wrong end of this one. The Oilers are now setting new records for their franchise pretty much every game that they play these days. Skinner had 26 saves on Saturday to equal Grant Fuhr's franchise record with his 10th consecutive win. And Sam Gagner's goal was the game winner as the Oilers made it 13 straight. So this is actually the longest win streak, not only by the Oilers, but by a Canadian NHL team, period, passing the 1967-68 Habs, who won 12 in a row. So more good news on that front for the Oilers. Hopefully it'll translate to them getting into the playoffs and a little bit of success there.
The other success story out west, the Canucks, late power play goals lead the Canucks past the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, Toronto did not have a good game in this one. Stupid mistakes led, unfortunately, to Marty Jones getting lit up. The fact that Connor Garland and Nils Höglander both had 2 goals for the Canucks. While there was some hope there. They managed to let a 3-0 first period lead slip away from them, and Toronto fans actually thought they might have had a chance to win it, but stupid mistakes at the tail end of the game meant that it got away from them.
Austin Matthews scored his 38th.
Yeah, he scored his 38th and the leading 38th goal, by the way, as the Maple Leafs topped the Kraken 3-1. Matthews scored. A couple of guys that have been in the doghouse actually managed to score. Jake McCabe got one, as well as Nick Robertson. Samsonov had a great performance. There was a time there where he went about 10 minutes without a shot, and when the Kraken finally came back in, he was up for the task. So it was good to see.
He only faced 16 or 17 shots. When a goaltender faces so few shots, it's tougher than you might think. And I think we all know that. We all know that not getting enough work creates an opportunity for mistakes. And his concentration was so good that even under those circumstances, he played really well. And he really did have a couple of really good saves where he moved very well and anticipated shots and took away what would have been, I think, an 80% chance of a sure goal at least twice.
Well, the fact that he's now battling through was really nice to see, as opposed to him just sort of giving up on plays when it gets to a certain point around his sides or behind the net. That was his first win in 43 days. So very glad to see that for Samsonov. Also glad to see that he was awarded the belt post game.
Yes. And okay, let's go. Well, any quick comments on the Leafs? I mean, the coach said one thing that I'd like to comment on when he said, I don't know what's wrong with the team. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but generally, specifically, maybe not, but generally, that's what he was saying. What is wrong with the Leafs?
Well,
What is
that's
he trying to articulate?
I think he's trying to articulate the fact that the opportunities are there for them to take the win. They're just, for some odd reason, not taking the next step and actually winning. The opportunities have presented themselves. They've far too often so far this season managed to let themselves give away leads. They can't seem to hold leads in the third period, and that is of genuine concern. So,
And their uniforms need to get a little more scuffed. They're playing physical. A few of them are, but there's a few players that need to be a little more scuffed. And we saw Nylander revert to what most of us don't like about Nylander is when he becomes very lackadaisical. He's hit and miss both. Fortunately, at least recently, he's been more hit, less miss. So we forgive him of that, I suppose. But I think that he has to be more consistent. The problem with the Leafs is, and I go back to what I said a few weeks ago, they have to be harder to score against. They have to be harder to score against.
I did mention a little earlier this season that they were starting to make themselves into a team that is harder to play against. But I think in general, on the whole, Frank, I think you're right in that they're playing just a little bit too soft. Some of their gear needs to get a little more rumpled.
Yeah, and then we got a guy who says he's not injured. The coach says he's practicing through injury. It's really an interesting situation in Toronto.
Well, and again, it all depends on your definition of injured.
Robidas?
Well, I mean, that's definitely injured. But there's also, hurt and inconvenienced. Those
Yeah,
are, different levels on the pain scale and on the whole hurt level thing.
absolutely. Let's go to Canada and the news. And the feds won't appeal landmark citizenship ruling for lost Canadians.
So, for those of you who aren't aware, there was a part of the Canadian Citizenship Act that recently went before the Ontario Superior Court. It was ruled unconstitutional. They found that the federal government violated charter rights with its second generation cutoff rule, which denies automatic citizenship to children born abroad if their Canadian parents were also born abroad. The theory is once a Canadian, always a Canadian, regardless of birth, which is what the Ontario courts decided on in light of this government's arbitrary cutoff. Now, this arbitrary cutoff was actually put into place by the Harper government. They were trying to cut back on that sort of second generation citizenships from people born in foreign countries. Um, it came in response to the evacuation of 15,000 Lebanese Canadians stranded in Beirut in the 2006 conflict, between Israel and Hezbollah, an operation that cost taxpayers $85 million. But Harper threw that in there as just, I don't know. I can't understand the idea behind cutting off Canadians if they've been out of the country for more than a certain period of time.
Yeah, it's sort of the opposite of what you said, right? Once a Canadian, always a Canadian.
Yeah,
And once born in Canada, always born in Canada, kind of thing.
yeah.
Anyway, A new registry of bad tenants. Some landlords, well, tell me the story.
So, Wei Ting Bolu founded the platform Open Room a little over a year ago when she had trouble ousting a tenant. She's a landlord, um, and the problem was she had trouble getting the tenant out of her home that she owned in Vaughan, even after the tenant had stopped paying rent. Um, so what they've done is a lot of landlords have collaborated, and with the input of some tenants, have started to compile an online database that now has more than 10,000 documents, which are related to delinquent tenants, but also related to problematic landlords, those who won't fix things, those who are doing renovictions, and that sort of thing. It's actually becoming a relatively useful tool for people because anyone can access Open Room and search a potential tenant or landlord's name to find out whether the Landlord and Tenant Board, or LTB, has issued any orders against that person. So this is a way for renters to help protect themselves, and also for landlords to help protect themselves against grifters and squatters.
Yeah, that's terrible. Let's talk about former Alberta superintendent loses credentials for snooping on diploma exams and falsifying records.
Yeah, he purposefully inserted himself into situations where there was a clear conflict of interest and abuse of authority. Um, the individual in question was in Red Deer. Um, the individual in question's name, well, it's on the article, Paul Mason. His behavior was declared highly unprofessional and represented a significant breach of trust. They canceled his superintendent leadership certificate, and permanent professional certificate effective immediately. It's the first case on record of a government permanently revoking a superintendent's teaching credentials as a result of a committee's disciplinary finding. He was fired by the board of Red Deer Catholic Regional Schools in February 2020 after more than 8 years. The board provided no rationale at the time, um, but that was because the firing happened during an investigation by Alberta Education's registrar. So he was found to be in violation. Student grades had been inflated to make his pass rate look better and the educational results look better. So that was part of why he was terminated.
Alberta, the province, wants a list of municipal agreements with the federal government.
So this is the Alberta government opening up a new front in its fight with the federal government. Um, they're asking uh, every city and town to provide them information on any and all municipal and federal agreements that they have in place, and they have to comply by January 31st. Um, what they're trying to do is apparently getting an understanding of the agreements between Alberta's municipalities and the federal government. Alberta's government will continue to stand up for their constitutional jurisdiction while assuring they're working with municipalities to receive equitable funding from the federal government. So they're looking to interpose themselves into any agreements that these cities may have with the federal government.
Buses halted as Metro Vancouver transit workers go on strike.
So this is a situation where there are about 180 workers represented by QP Local 4500. The job action actually began at 3 a.m. Pacific time, which is 3 weeks after the workers began to refuse overtime. They have been working. They have been working basically without a contract for a while now. So QP Local 4500 is trying to um, get them a better contract and get them back on the job.
Looking at PE, government's positive comments on healthcare system.
So basically, the PEI Nurses Union has joined doctors associated with Prince County Hospital in Summerside in declaring an emergency at the hospital in an open letter that was published on Sunday. Um, we're all for identifying the same concerns, and we want to make sure the public are also aware, said Union's President Barbara Brookins. On Thursday, Health PEI announced that PCH would begin accepting fewer critical care patients due to a lack of staff in the progressive care unit starting in late January. That same day, East Prince medical staff declared an emergency at the hospital in an open letter signed by 42 different doctors. So the provincial government is at odds with the actual doctors in the hospital themselves, and they're having a conflict over that.
Saskatchewan teachers striking again Monday as job action over contract negotiations escalates.
So they're holding a second one-day strike today. More than 6 months of contract negotiations with the province have actually reached a stalemate there. There were approximately 13,000 members who walked out and picketed across the province last Tuesday, and that was actually the union's first strike since 2011. The teachers' collective agreement expired in August. In October, the union members voted 95% in favor of authorizing possible sanctions and job actions. STF President Samantha Bickott said the union would engage in further job action today, which at the time could include another walkout, a withdrawal of voluntary services, restricting teachers' hours of work, and also working to rule. I mean, it's a tough thing to work without a contract, so I can sympathize with what they're trying to do.
Well, a lot of negotiations going on, and you know, inflation kind of drives this too, right? People are affected by rising costs, and of course, when costs start to rise, wages become a factor in maybe dissatisfaction, if you will.
For sure, and that's part of it. The greedflation that we're currently seeing, unfortunately, is a lot of what is driving this.
All right, Aaron, thanks for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me, Frank.
For Aaron William Freeland, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, airing Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Network, on Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. Ciao for now.